Hello and welcome. Welcome to Horror Talks. I am here with Jenny Ellen, author of Blood Lily, which is, I believe, part of a series. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So I just finished Blood Lily yesterday. I'm really excited to talk about it because I'm kind of a forensics nerd. I didn't go to school for it or anything, but I spent really the formative years of my adulthood, like watching Forensic Files and all of those things. So that's kind of what drew me to this book. So I took questions from our Books of Horror book group. So I'm excited to kind of ask you all the questions. I hear we have a top secret announcement later on. So I'm looking forward to hearing what that is. Okay, so I accidentally closed my questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and open those again. Off to a great start. So Blood Lily
makes it more believable. It's fine.
It is. We're human. We're not vampires, which is a great segue because Blood Lily. So Blood Lily is about vampires, and it is a series too. There's a book after it, I believe.
Yes. Book 2 is Rose of Jericho, and then book 3 is with my editor right now. So I have at least one more book planned after that.
That's awesome. That's exciting. I just finished Blood Lily, so I'm excited to pick up the next one, Rose of Jericho. So just some basics. So do you want to talk about kind of the background, how the book works? Like, I'm interested because it's a vampire story, but they're not like normal vampires.
They are not. I've always loved vampires, but I always wondered what it would be like if they weren't much different than humans. So my vampires are born, they're not made. They don't have all the fancy frills of being a vampire, pretty much just the immune system. And depending on how strong their bloodline is, like how long they'll live. So those are their really only advantages. But hiding in a world nowadays with facial recognition and like accountability everywhere, like it's harder and harder to hide. And how they would deal with that. So that was my premise going in.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's very science based. So it's not just like, oh, you get bitten and now you're a vampire. Like it's like towards the beginning of the book, it said something like, oh, you can tell it's a vampire when you run tests because of the super low hemoglobin. I'm like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. But like I said, like I'm a forensics nerd, so like I really like the science-based information. So that tells me you may have kind of a science background. Is that true?
Yes, I'm a full-time nurse, so I went to school for nursing specifically, but I also took classes in forensics and forensic anthropology, which if I had my life to do over again, I would be Temperance Brennan every time. That was my nickname in college.
That's amazing. Yeah, forensics. Like I love forensics of all kinds. I studied psychology. I'm like, oh, I can be a forensic psychologist. And then I'm like, no, I do not have the emotional intelligence to do that. But
Absolutely.
it just
So
it's
she's a crime scene investigator, so she deals with like the aftermath of violence and figuring out motives and trying to detect if like there might be vampires involved, so she can kind of head that off. But my vampires are very few and far between in the world, and so she doesn't have a lot to do. So she feels very lost at the start of the book and just wants a purpose for her life. So it's a whole monkey paw situation. Like, careful what you wish for.
yeah, exactly. And then she may or may not have found something to do.
Yeah.
And she pursues that. And it's a fascinating story. And the thing that I find really interesting about this book too is that it's not just one genre. Like I was reading this and I'm like, okay, we're a horror group, so like we're all about the horror here. But like there's thriller, there's some romance. Like if you think about it hard enough, like you can say it's science fictiony. Because there's really like a big science kind of push in the whole book. So when you think of do you fall into like a certain genre yourself? Do you read a lot of a certain genre?
I'm varied. So I started with a lot of fantasy actually growing up. And I always liked the fantasy worlds that made it as real as possible and that suspension of disbelief. Um, but I love thrillers. I like a little romance as long as it's not too like nausea inducing.
Yeah.
Me and Lilith are very much alike in that sense. She's not a very romantic soul.
No, I wouldn't say so.
But yeah, I love blending those things into one thing. And I've had readers that are like, oh, I don't read horror, I can't read your books. And then they read them and absolutely loved them and can't wait for the next one. So I like the fact that it's kind of introduces people a little bit to horror and it gets a little darker with each book.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I definitely agree because I started my, book reading experience with horror, but then I did a period of time where I just only read thrillers. So I'm reading this, I'm like, it's a page turner. It really is. Like, it doesn't have that slow build that you usually see in horrors. Like, you want to know what's going on in this book. So for anybody who's watching this and haven't read it, if you like any of those genres, like, you need to pick this book up because I really did love it.
Oh, thank you.
So I did take some questions from our Books of Horror group, so I'm going to go through some of them now. This first question is from MJ Mars, who is another author in our group. We love her. She's super, super sweet. She says, I'd love to know what you enjoy most about the writing process and what you like the least.
The least is like three things really. Writing the blurb because nobody likes that. It's torture. It's such torture. And then writing spicy scenes and fight scenes are challenging for me. Like I really have to work on them quite a bit to get them where I want them to be, where like dialogue flows simply for me. Like I am a dialogue person. If I could make the book all dialogue, I would. So that is my favorite part. I get really into the dialogue for my characters.
I feel like, sorry, I have a bad habit of interrupting people while they're talking. I'm sorry. I was going to say, like, you could really tell because there was a lot of dialogue, but like the more dialogue you have, the stronger your characters become, like the more real they become. So there's a lot of character development too in the story because of that. But I can see why spicy scenes would be hard. Like I avoid them at all costs. I'm like, fade to black.
Yeah, I don't do quite fade to black, but close. I love the teasing part up to it, yeah. But then when it gets to the actual act, I'm like, done. Okay, this happened. We're done.
And they did the deed. The end.
Yeah, pretty much. We know how it works. It's fine.
It's definitely a lot more than that in the books. So if anybody's watching this, like they're pretty good spicy scenes. This question is from Reese Bowling. Hey Jenny, what inspired you to become a horror author?
I love this question because it allows me to talk about mental health, which is very important to me. So the reason I started writing to begin with is I had a best friend in high school who had a lot of dark stuff that he didn't share and I didn't know about. And the sophomore year of high school, like he committed suicide and it messed me up real bad. Wow. And I had night terrors for decades. I never really connected my night terrors with that for some reason. I don't know why. I couldn't connect those two as the source. But when I was kind of isolated in Tennessee, which is the same part where it's actually Duncan's house was the house I was living in.
Oh, wow.
I had no job, no money, I had no reliable internet access. Like I was very isolated and I just started writing. And when I started writing Blood Lily, especially like the darker scenes and when it got into her night terrors, it was like I was able to pull all that out of myself and trap it in the paper and then play around with it in a safe place where I could resolve those issues. And like, I don't have night terrors anymore. I barely have nightmares. It's amazing to me. So it's mental health is the reason I started writing.
Yeah.
And the reason I'll keep writing.
Yeah. That's I'm so sorry that happened. It's so hard. So mental health is really near and dear to my heart as well, but the fact that you're able to take all of that and kind of channel it into the writing just for therapy for yourself, like I feel like that's just such an important thing. And back, I'm not sure how old you are, and don't tell me if you don't want to, but mental health back then probably wasn't as in the spotlight as it is now, and I'm sure your friend didn't feel like that they had any resources, and there are so many resources now. So just a quick plug, like if you have mental health issues, reach out. Like there is somebody who will help you. It's
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. That's such a hard thing to go through.
It
Um,
is, but it's important to me, and that's why I keep the mental health aspects in the book. I'm very focused on showing how the events affect the characters,
yeah,
not just physically or anything else, but how their personality changes because of what happens to them. Is very, very important to me. Like her nightmares get worse. Um, and there's a point in book 2 where she doesn't even realize if it's a nightmare or not. She can't tell the difference between the nightmare and reality. And it really messes things up quite a bit.
yeah. Oh, I can
So,
imagine how
yeah.
horrible that must be. I don't know. I I'm gonna skip this next question because it's kind of a jokey question, and I don't think we're ready quite to change that quickly. But this question is from Erin Mandrakia. She says, "Do you have a particular place you like to write the most, like a room in your house, or like a coffee shop or a library?"
I'm an opportunist. If I could write somewhere, I'm gonna write. Um, usually it's in my dining room slash office. That's where my computer is. But I do a lot of like handwriting still, especially downtime at work and things like that, which sometimes is awkward. Like last night, I was working on a scene that was a spicy scene while I'm sitting at a desk at work. People are like, "What are you writing?" Nothing, nothing you need to see. It's fine.
Oh, can I see? No, no, you
Nope,
cannot.
nope, you can't.
That is fantastic. Oh yeah. Um, okay, so this question is from James Seymour, and the question is pantser or plotter? And I needed to have this question explained to me. I don't know if you understand what it means.
Yeah, I do because I
Okay.
do get it a lot. I am a blend. So I like to have like an overall arc. Like I want to know where my story is going. And sometimes I'll plan a few chapters ahead. I'll plan certain scenes that I want to have happen. But ultimately, when I'm writing, it's whatever the characters want because they do what they want, whether I want them to or not. Like I had a moment I definitely doubted my sanity working on book 3 because I was in the middle of writing a scene and all of a sudden a character just does something he is not supposed to do, at least not this soon. Like, what are you doing? And I tried to rewrite it 4 or 5 times, it just won't happen. And it was like the character was just telling me, deal with it. It's real.
The
Like,
characters write themselves. You're only the vessel. Like you have no control over this.
none. They're like, but you're physically writing it down. I'm like, yeah,
Like you
but
don't understand.
it's not my words.
The
Like,
character
yeah,
is the one telling me what to do. Like, I
yep,
mean, I feel like that makes sense because if that's the natural progression for this character, sometimes it just works out that way where what you have planned just doesn't really make that much sense, but it makes more sense to go a different path as you're writing
yeah, exactly. It was one of those moments. And I was like, well, good for you.
it. You did
Bring a
it.
bright spot into the book. It's great.
Um, so out of curiosity, so you do a lot of writing, but what are your hobbies outside of writing?
I have too many.
Yeah.
So I'm high functioning anxiety. Um, so I don't know how to relax. My husband calls it a chronic inability to relax. So I am also an artist. I do art commissions for other authors.
Oh,
I just finished, well, I'm almost finished with the commission for a TikTok person. So, or group really.
amazing.
So it's really exciting. I'm excited about that one. I also do wood burning. I build antique vampire hunting kits. I have
Wow.
art prints. Like I do all kinds of stuff. If it's creative and it springs into my head, I'm gonna try it. So
That's so cool.
yeah.
Are you able to tell me like what goes into a vampire kit? Is it like a hunting thing or how does that work?
Yeah. It's like the old like my inspiration came from Fright Night, which was one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Like it's one of the first ones that I watched. And I loved Peter Vincent and his vampire hunting kit. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I was like, I want to make small versions of that. So I started making them. I got really cool, like antique little boxes on sale. And then for all the little bottles, I used like little loops of ribbon, but I got actual vestment trim from the Ukraine to use. So I
Oh
try to use
wow.
like authentic, cool materials. And they turned out awesome. They're really cool. Everyone loves them, but I've only sold one because they tend to be pricey.
So do you have like an Etsy like where could somebody buy one of those?
Right now I just have some of them on my Facebook page. I'm working on getting more stuff on my website. Because right now it's just the books and then like 2 art prints. It's just finding the time to list all that stuff because it takes forever. But
Yeah.
eventually they will be up on my website, which is jennyallenbooks.com.
Okay, that's awesome. That sounds really cool, actually. Um, okay, so this is a very deep question. So what television shows are you currently bitching? Because everybody has got a television show to talk about. Sorry, my
I'm
cat just
kind of in a show hole right now, guys. Like, I don't know what to watch. The Last of Us kind of broke me.
Oh yeah.
That show, it was brilliant and wonderful. And The Mandalorian is also done right now. You can tell there's a pattern. Um, but I occasionally binge watch like I always have The Office or Community or Parks and Rec on
Yeah.
somewhere. Like they're just classic. Supernatural all the time. Um, yeah. I can't even think of the last. I think the last cool one I watched was From, which was really twisty and cool. It was on Amazon Prime.
I'll
It's
have to
a
look at it. Never
horror
heard of it.
series. Yeah, it was pretty neat.
You mentioned like the Parks and Rec and The Office. Like those are my like palate cleanser. Like anytime I'm watching something dark, like really dark, and I'm like, oh man, I can't get out of this funk. I'm like, okay, let me turn on Parks and Rec. I'll be okay.
Yep, exactly.
Good shows. Um, so what scares you the most when you're reading or watching horror?
um, Things you can't control. So one of the scariest movies ever to me um, was Final Destination, the first
Yeah.
one.
Oh yeah.
Like it terrified me. I jumped at every curtain that moved for like 3 weeks. That scares the crap out of me. Like bad guys and monsters and gore and stuff. Like I might die, but I have a fighting chance. I could try to kill them. But like ghost movies and movies where you don't have any control and you can't see it coming, like those terrify me.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Anything that's like kind of based in reality, but like a spin on it, like that's what scares me. Like serial killers, like I cannot handle serial killers. I can't do it. Um, So this question is from RJ Rolls, who is one of the admins of the Books of Horror book group. He asks, what horror book made you jealous you didn't write it?
I
Something
saw
I
that question. And I've been racking my brain because the odd thing is like I haven't read a lot of horror, to be completely honest. I watch a lot of horror.
yeah.
That's kind of my jam. When I was younger, I had a really weak stomach and I tried to read Stephen King. So I was like, I'll read the smallest one he has, which was Cycle of the Werewolf. I got one chapter in, and I was like, oh, I can't. So I have quite a few horror books by authors in the group that I really want to read, but I've had issues reading fiction books in like 8 years. The only books I've read are my own.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can't turn off my internal editor. I just can't. And I also didn't want to alter my voice until I was really firm in my writing style.
Yeah.
So for that was another reason. But like I recently just finished my first fiction book in 8 years that wasn't mine. But it wasn't
Wow.
horror.
It was what?
It wasn't a horror book though.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me what it was?
It's incredibly hyped, but worth it. It was Fourth Wing.
Oh, okay.
I loved it. It was awesome.
All right. That's good to know. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar. Is it like a fantasy book, I think?
Yeah, it's about dragon riding, kind of like battle college. It was really, really neat though. It harled back to my days of Mercedes Lackey and Anne McCaffrey and stuff, but with modern writing styles, which
Oh,
was
wow.
very good. Yeah. Like they cuss, there's spice. It's fantastic.
One of the questions, I'm going to skip ahead. Paulina Baker, she asks, what's your most recent 5-star read? So I'm guessing that's probably it.
Yeah. I did give it 5 stars, but it's also the only read I've had in 8 years. So
So, by default, that one wins.
yeah.
Um, well, this question is, what's your all-time favorite horror book? But if you don't really read horror, what's your all-time favorite book, just in general?
I mean, for sentimental purposes, I would have to say Obsidian Butterfly by Laurel Hamilton, because that's what got me into paranormal, like supernatural styles. Before that, I was all fantasy. Um, I picked it up at an airport when I was flying from Hawaii to Germany and absolutely loved it and went back and read all the books in the beginning of the series, which I loved. But after that book, I just couldn't keep reading her because all the plot started to suffer just for sex scenes. And that's not me. So, but the first few books were fantastic. But Obsidian Butterfly is the one that made me like the genre that I write in. So I'd have to go with that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I hate so much when books change, like for for the audience, kind of in a way, but like it just kind of takes away from what the book is to begin with. Like I was reading the Game of Thrones series, and I got through books, I think through book four, and then it started to change because I think that's when they started making the show, and you could tell like something changed, and I was like, okay, buddy, like you need to not do that.
Yes.
So I was like, I can't read this anymore. It gets really frustrating.
See, that's a really great lead into for my little special announcement thing.
Oh,
So, um, so I've had a lot of requests and stuff from fans that really liked the books, and they're like, "Hey, if you ever do a special edition, can you maybe write some like extended spicy scenes?"
oh wow.
Apparently, this is the thing. I wasn't spicy enough, apparently. But I've been looking for a way to do like a hardback for Blood Lily and Rose of Jericho, but they're still under contract from my publisher. But I found out from my publisher that I can release a special edition hardcover of Blood Lily and Rose of Jericho together in one book.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I've been working on this as my project. So I've been doing all kinds of really cool things with the interior and stuff, really amping up the design factor to make it worthy of a collector's edition. My cover artist is working on a new cover for it. I'm gonna do a dust jacket and like it's gonna be awesome and probably close to 750 pages. But
Wow.
as bonus content, I am working on doing extended spicy scenes, which I will not release in the regular books ever, but will only be in the special collector's edition.
Okay. I love
Yeah.
that so much. So
Yeah.
when you do release this, so timeline wise, like how long from now do you think that will take? And are you going to do like signed copies, like or any kind of special events or anything like that?
Oh, I'm always doing special events. I already I have 4 in September and October
Wow.
already.
Only four?
My next one is September 16th and 17th in Roanoke, Virginia, and at Sinful Signings. They're doing a masquerade ball on the Saturday night. I'm over the moon excited about it. It's
That's
awesome.
amazing. So you're gonna like
Uh,
dress up like with the like
oh
mask and
yeah.
everything?
Yeah, I got my mask in the other day. I'm gonna spruce it up and make it look awesome. But I have like an off the shoulder black lace that goes all the way to the floor. So that's gonna be my dress. Excited.
That's awesome.
Um,
That's so cool. I wish that
but
was
yeah,
closer to me.
special stuff for this special edition. I'm also toying with the idea of doing like a bonus chapter or two from maybe another character's point of view, although I haven't really settled on what I want to do with that yet.
Mhm.
And then a lot of it depends on my awesome cover artist and how long he takes to make me a kick-ass cover.
Which
Because the
it
books
can't be
aren't
rushed. It can't be
no,
rushed. So it's on his
no.
or her time frame. But do you know
Yeah.
whose point of view, or is that still up in the air too? Can you share that?
Um, the
If
ones
not,
I've heard the most from is people want to see a chapter from like Chance or from Cohen.
yes,
Like
Cohen has
those
my
are the two.
vote. I
Yeah.
love like
You
I'm
will
not.
love book 2 so
Okay.
much because it's basically the Cohen book
Oh,
in a
good.
way.
Oh,
Like
good.
you get to learn so much more about his character, and he goes through it. Like, yeah. By the end of book 2, you'll absolutely adore him because he's my favorite character to write. Because even if he does things if he does things for the right reason, he never does them the right way.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a big doof is what he is. But I don't want to like give away spoilers. So I guess if somebody is watching this and hasn't read the book yet, like this is a little bit of a spoiler, but not really. But the entire time, like ever since the minute that I met Cohen, like I believed a certain thing about him. Like the whole time, and then it turns out that thing's not true. I'm like, what?
if
What do you mean?
you do it quietly.
Yeah, he's
Oh
good.
yeah, I have someone that's really pushing for Cohen and Lilith to have a thing. Like I've gotten a lot of pressure about it, but I will be 100% honest that like I'm a hopeless romantic. I'm a Scorpio, like through and through to the core. So like unless something dramatic happens, like I don't see that happening.
Okay.
Just saying.
So spoiler alert, don't get too excited. That's what you're saying.
I mean, you can, but you know, just remember that everything comes at a price. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's true. I agree because it's at the point that I'm at right now, it is a very specific direction. So I get it, but it's okay. I do love him though. So tell us something that we'd be surprised to learn about you, something, an interesting fact about yourself.
Interesting fact. I have dual citizenship. So
Oh
I
yeah?
was born in England. So I still have British birth certificate, so I could go there if I want to.
Oh, nice.
But I was born on a Royal Air Base over there in England, so British soil. So I have dual citizenship. That's my escape plan. Except it's just as crazy over there as it is here, so it's not much of an escape plan.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
escape one crazy to get to the other crazy. It's
Yeah. The more
which I mean,
expensive crazy too.
probably, yeah, the taxes aren't that great over there. But so you were born there, but you didn't really live there though. Is that because you definitely don't have an accent?
No, I lived there till I was 9,
Oh wow.
but I moved to Rome, New York after there. And kids are very mean.
Oh,
So I lost the accent real quick.
you learned, yeah, you learned to adapt.
Yeah. When I
Hey,
get
you
really
guys.
angry or, you know, really intoxicated, it comes out a bit much. Like, but mostly it's just certain words. Like I'll talk about my relatives and say my Auntie Mary, and they're just like, "You're what?"
It
It's my
just
auntie.
slips out there like, who are you? I don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Like, no.
Do you spend a lot of time over there at all? Like, do you use your citizenship to your benefit at all?
No, because it's kind of like a one-way ticket. So if I ever claim British citizenship, America's going to be like, we don't know who you are anymore. Disown me.
Denied.
So I have gone over, I did a 2-week vacation over in Scotland because I was considering going to the Glasgow School of Art,
Oh,
but
okay.
things did not work out with the guy that I was supposed to move in with over there.
Oh.
I got a really awesome consolation prize in my 9-year-old son, but things didn't work out.
Well, there you go. You couldn't get anything better out of the deal.
Yeah, no, he's amazing and awesome.
That's good. Um, and so this is the last like actual question, and we'll go into something a little fun after that. But what advice can you share with people who would like to publish a novel?
Um, Publishing, always read your contract.
Oh,
Always vet the company before you sign with them. I signed with a little indie publisher called Indie Gypsy a couple years ago for my books, and they never sent me a sales report, never paid me a dime, and then went under in
oh,
2020.
oh
Thankfully, I
no.
got
Are
my
you
copyrights
serious?
back. I'm 100% serious. Yeah. I got my copyrights back, but I never made any money from them at all. Like I never saw a dime.
What? So
So yeah,
how long between like when you published and when they went down? Like, were you with them
like
for a
a
long time?
year and a half. Yeah.
Jeez, that
And I actually
sucks.
knew one of their other authors too, and she was the one that convinced me to come over, and she had a wonderful experience. So I don't know what happened, but it was a bad experience. So I've learned to like always read your contracts. Especially if you decide to go with a hybrid publisher like I'm with right now with Fulton. I mean, they've been really nice with me, and they do have a thing where like the money you invest up front, they don't collect any royalties until you make that back.
Oh,
So it's different than some of the other vanity publishers, but still, like they don't do enough for me to warrant the price. So Ingram Spark opens everything up, and I think it's a better option right now.
wow. Well, I'm sorry that you had to go through some like really shitty situations, but I'm glad that, at least now you feel like you're kind of in the right place. And that's good advice for everybody.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in the Books of Horror group are aspiring writers, so that's really useful information. Like you suffered so that other people didn't have to.
Yeah, it's all a learning experience. And as long as like we use it to help other people, then, it's still worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we don't have too much time left. I do have like a fun little thing that I kind of like to end these interviews with. It's just a this or that. I'll give you two options, and without thinking about it, just tell me which one you prefer.
Okay.
So the first one is beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Sweet or salty?
Oh, this is a difficult one.
Yeah.
If I had to choose, I would say salty.
Yeah, it's hard. That was probably the hardest of all the questions. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Morning person or night person?
This has changed many times in my life, but I would say I'm more of a night person than a morning person.
I've never heard of anybody changing. Most people are just like, they're one thing and they're that way for the rest of their lives.
I was a night person through and through, and then I went to nursing school, and that trains it
Oh.
out of you immediately.
Oh, yeah.
So I usually work day shift, but right now I'm like on a night shift. It's everything's messed up.
I wouldn't be able to work nights. I'd be a zombie. They'd be like,
Yeah.
what is wrong with this person? I'm like, oh, because I don't function. That's right.
Yeah.
Bookstore or online shopping?
Bookstore for aesthetics.
Yeah.
Like if I really need a book, I'll probably buy it online because I don't like waiting. But yes, I love bookstores.
Yes. Support your local indie bookstores, everybody. Do it. Paperback or hardcover?
Paperback to read, hardcover to keep.
Yes. Not many people say that, but I absolutely agree. All of my books are paperback because they're so much more comfortable to hold. Series or standalone?
Oh, series. I don't like not knowing how things continue.
I feel like that makes sense because you write a series. Like I feel like if you're writing a series, then you must prefer the series.
Yeah.
Audiobook or physical book?
Physical book, because I don't really do audiobooks except when I have to drive long distances. Although I might be changing that. I don't know. Physical book for now.
Okay. Bookmark, or are you a psycho who dog ears your books?
I am a bookmark person, and I even make bookmarks. So yeah.
You
bookmarks.
do? Oh, so
I do.
Can you buy those too, like on your website?
I don't have them up there yet. Mostly I do those at events. I have wood burned ones that I do that have funny sayings in them.
Oh,
Like never mind the passive aggressive raven. It's one of my favorites.
that's fantastic.
I only date fictional men, things like that. And then I do art print ones that I have in little bookmark sleeves with tassels too. So yeah.
I collect bookmarks, so I might actually offline hit you up about some of that. So
Cool.
So horror books, do you prefer gore or psychological?
I would prefer psychological.
And then zombies or ghosts?
Ghosts.
Yeah. Most of those questions we have in common. So just so you know. So that was it. I want to thank you so much. This was awesome. I've learned so much about, you and vampires, and I can't wait to read Rose of Jericho. I'm saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And to learn
and then
all about
the Lotus Tree is book 3, and that's with my editor and my alpha readers right now.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I look forward to that. So timeline wise, how long does that take, out of curiosity, to get from, in editing to production?
It's my first time using a real true editor. So I'm using Horrorsmith editing, which was highly recommended. So I'm not sure, but I'm hoping that the book 3 will be out before the end of the year.
Okay.
That's my hope. So.
Good. So I have time to read the next one then.
Yeah.
Just in time for the new one to come out. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing your new book out, and I wish you the best of luck. And please expect a message from me about, supplying myself with some books.
Absolutely. I will look you up.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.